Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are strapping in for a deep, concentrated journey back to Montgomery, Alabama in 1955.
Yeah, it's quite a story.
But this isn't going to be your standard historical overview. We're looking at a really unique stack of sources today. They treat the defining moment of the civil rights movement, the Montgomery bus boycott, not as this, sweeping historical event.
Right, not the bird's eye view.
Exactly. But as an intensely personal, almost gut-wrenching conflict, fought across breakfast tables, kitchen floors, specifically between two very connected households.
That's exactly our mission today. We're digging into some dramatic narrative material, really focused on that period between December 55 and December 56, about 14 months.
Okay.
And we're zooming right in on Odessa Carter, they called her Desi, who worked as a maid.
Right.
And the Thompson family, her white employers. We're trying to move beyond just the big names, the leaders everyone knows.
Important as they are.
Absolutely. But this is about the relentless day-to-day psychological toll of segregation and the immense personal risks people took, individuals just trying to navigate that deep color line.
So we get the details, like how the system was maintained day to day.
We do. How they maintained it, how people fought back, what they sacrificed when, their lives inevitably collided.
I find this approach really powerful because it immediately humanizes this massive historical turning point. We're basically exploring how the high-stakes politics of segregation literally walked into the Thompsons' kitchen and into Odessa's home.
That's it.
So let's unpack this. Let's start with the baseline.
Yeah.
What did life actually look like under Jim Crow in Montgomery in 1955?
Yeah.
This is before the boycott really kicks off as a major threat.
Okay, so we start with our central figure, Odessa Carter, Desi. She worked for Miriam and Norman Thompson, who were, a fairly typical, well-off white family in Montgomery at the time.
Right.
And the source material, it sets up this oppressive atmosphere almost immediately. It shows us just how easily Black citizens could be humiliated or targeted.
Even when they were literally working for white employers at that moment.
Especially then, sometimes.
Yeah.
They're actively doing their duties, but the law wasn't designed to protect them. It was designed to control them. Simple as that.
And we see that control, right away in what the source calls the Oak Park incident. It sounds minor, but it seems to capture the whole power dynamic.
It really does. It's a microcosm. So Odessa Desi, she's on duty. She's watching Mary Catherine, the Thompson daughter. She's maybe 7, 9 years old.
Okay.
Her and her little friends at Oak Park, they're just playing. Odessa's there supervising, doing her job.
He's perfectly normal.
Until it isn't. This is where the casual, just enforced nature of segregation gets really stark.
Yeah.
A police officer rolls up, and the exchange it's chilling, frankly, because of the officer's immediate aggression. There's no question, no investigation. He confronts Odessa directly, demands, "Negro, what are you doing in this park?"
Wow. Just like that?
Just like that. And then confirms very aggressively that the park is only for white people. Even though Odessa explains, I'm watching the Thompson children, he doesn't care. He demands she leave immediately.
So her job, her responsibility to these white children, it means nothing compared to the color line.
Nothing. It's not about her committing a crime in any normal sense. Her presence is the crime because of her skin color in a white park. Even acting as, like you said, a surrogate parent for white kids.
An officer's authority just trumps the employer's authority because he's white and she's Black.
That's the rule. Complete enforcement of racial separation delivered with intimidation.
And this wasn't unusual, you're saying?
Not at all. This wasn't some major legal showdown. The sources frame it as a common minor humiliation, the kind of thing that happened all the time, setting the stage for the bigger conflict. It just established the daily reality. Absolute white entitlement and forced separation.
And for the Black community.
They understood. Legally invisible, except as, potential targets for control. Police enforcement.
So when Miriam Thompson, the lady of the house, hears about this, this humiliation of her maid, you'd hope for maybe a spark of outrage about the injustice.
You might hope, but the source material is pretty clear. Her immediate reaction, it's rooted entirely in class, not conscience. Okay. Miriam's fury wasn't really about racial fairness or, basic human dignity. It was about her authority, her social standing.
How dare he embarrass her maid?
Exactly. How dare this low-ranking police officer have the audacity to embarrass her help in front of her children? For Miriam, the officer had basically trespassed on her domestic authority, her class status. It wasn't about a racial injustice against Odessa.
But she does take action, right? Which is something, I guess.
He does. And it's a powerful move in that context. She calls Commissioner Cly Silers And she actually succeeds. She forces the police department to apologize.
Okay. So there's an apology.
Yes, but, and this is the critical defining detail we really need to focus on, the apology was never delivered to Odessa Carter.
Wait, seriously?
Seriously. The police department apologized to Mrs. Thompson for the misunderstanding. The officer even apparently said to Miriam, "I'm sorry for embarrassing your maid in front of the children."
Wow.
It lays bare the legal and social invisibility of Black citizens in '55. Odessa, in this whole situation, she's just treated like an extension of the Thompson household.
Like property, almost.
Almost. The offense wasn't against Odessa's dignity, it was against the Thompson status.
This was like a legal fiction.
Yeah.
The officer didn't wrong Odessa, he just breached etiquette with Mrs. Thompson.
That's effectively how it played out. And Miriam, accepting that apology for Odessa, just confirms her position as the one holding all the authority, even over the, emotional fallout for her own maid.
And this whole dynamic, this hierarchy, it gets debated pretty quickly, right? At a dinner party.
Immediately. Later that evening, at a Thompson dinner party, Norman Thompson's brother, Tonker, he apparently argues vehemently against what Miriam did.
Tonker. Okay. He sounds like trouble.
He represents that hardline segregationist view, the kind that fears any deviation from the status quo. He's the family ideologue, basically, articulating the deep fear that even tiny concessions could make their whole world collapse.
What's his argument against Miriam's actions?
It's twofold. First, he criticizes her for the practical mistake, as he sees it, of sending her maid into a white park anyway.
Blaming the victim.
Right. And second, he criticizes her for making the poor man apologize to a Negro. He sees the apology itself as a kind of moral failing.
Why? Because it acknowledges a Black person might have legitimate complaint.
Exactly. Even indirectly, it suggests a Black person could have a grievance that white authority needed to fix. Tonker sees that as weakness, a crack in the wall.
In Miriam's defense, does she argue for fairness?
Not at all. It stays entirely self-centered, class-driven. She basically says she won't have her judgment challenged by a cop in diapers. It's about her authority, her social standing, not Odessa's rights.
So even within the white family, you see these different motivations, class entitlement versus pure racial ideology.
Yeah, but both ultimately committed to segregation, right? They're just fighting over the methods, the appearances.
It's a vital snapshot. It shows that even for someone like Miriam, who might later evolve, the initial motivation wasn't empathy for the Black experience. It was about maintaining her own control, her standards.
The groundwork is laid. The Thompsons live in this bubble of unquestioned white privilege, and Odessa lives in a world where her every move is watched, restricted, policed, even when she's serving the people in that bubble.
Okay, so the environment is set. The tension's just baked into every single daily interaction.
Okay.
And then the catalyst arrives. We know Rosa Parks wasn't the first. The sources mentioned the Colbert case earlier.
Right, Claudette Colvin. It had happened before.
But December 1st, 1955, Rosa Parks' arrest.
Yeah.
That was the one. The final straw.
That was the tipping point. The source material says the news spread incredibly fast. There was this flyer distributed after school. It announced another Black woman has been detained for refusing her seat.
And it wasn't just news, right? It was a call to action.
A direct, immediate call. It demanded all Black citizens stay off the buses Monday in protest. Just one day initially.
Right.
But even that forced people like Odessa to make a huge choice, a choice impacting their job, their income, right now.
Convenience and income versus dignity and collective action. That's the immediate choice.
Yeah.
So that first Monday morning,
Okay.
how does the boycott show up in the Thompson house?
Odessa's late for work. And when Miriam asks why, Odessa explained she couldn't risk taking the bus. And she mentions this really significant detail. The buses, they're running empty. Just the driver.
Empty buses.
Empty buses. And get this, it had a police car following it.
Wow. A police escort for an empty bus.
Yeah. The authorities were already out, making their presence felt, making sure the boycott didn't, disrupt things too much. But that visual, an empty bus, tailed by police, it just confirmed how serious this protest was right from hour one.
So Odessa walks instead.
She walks from the other side of the city.
That's miles, isn't it? A huge physical effort.
Huge. Hours out of her day, intense physical exhaustion. Every single day.
And how does she react to that? The source material mentions a contrast.
A really powerful, crucial contrast. Odessa notes she's physically wiped out, every muscle aching. But spiritually, she feels uplifted.
How so?
She talks about attending the nightly mass meetings, listening to the preachers, the leaders, the powerful rhetoric. It makes her feel like she can walk forever.
So the collective movement fuels the individual endurance.
Exactly. It infuses that hardship with purpose, turns this painful necessity into a meaningful act of resistance.
But it wasn't easy for her family, the walking. There's conflict there, too.
Right. You see the immediate impact on personal lives. Her husband, Theodore, and her son, Franklin, they're ready. They see it as necessary, follow the orders.
Okay.
But her daughter, Selma, she's the voice of, immediate teenage frustration.
Uh-huh. This is where the personal cost really hits home.
Totally tangible. Selma's just angry because she can't take the bus to see this boy she likes over in Newtown.
A normal teenage thing becomes political.
Right. For the younger generation, this big political movement immediately clamps down on their personal freedom, their social life. Wanting to see a friend becomes this act that could potentially undermine the whole boycott. The stakes, even for small things, just shot way up.
You mentioned the mass meetings being key for morale. What was the core message there? What turned this protest about bus seats into something bigger, a moral crusade?
Oh, the rhetoric was everything. It was the absolute backbone of their motivation, their ability to keep going. It took the protest way beyond just bus seating. It elevated it to a fight for, cosmic justice. Faith was the glue.
Is there a key quote or idea?
Yes, there's this foundational quote. You really have to grasp it to understand their resilience. If we are wrong, then the Supreme Court is wrong. If we are wrong, the Constitution of the United States is wrong. If we are wrong, the very God is wrong.
Wow. That is incredibly powerful.
Galvanizing, isn't it? If you're hearing that night after night.
It basically says if fighting for equality is wrong, then everything, law, morality, God himself is wrong.
Pretty much. It positions the boycotters as morally and spiritually right, almost infallible, regardless of what Montgomery's local laws said.
Yeah.
They were aligning themselves with the highest possible authorities.
It gives you ideological armor.
Exactly. It gave them the strength to endure the physical pain, the exhaustion. You can walk till your feet bleed if you truly believe you're doing God's work and that the highest law in the land and in heaven is on your side. That deep sense of spiritual righteousness, that's what sustained them for 381 days.
Okay, let's pivot back to Miriam Thompson, the early white reaction. She sees Odessa as exhausted from walking. Does that finally break through? Does she show some real empathy?
It does seem to pierce the bubble a bit, but, cautiously and very practically.
How so?
She tries to find a compromise, one that minimizes her own inconvenience, importantly, while letting her keep her maid, which is obviously key to her lifestyle, her status.
Right.
So she offers to drive Odessa to work on Tuesdays and Fridays. Those are the days she's already going to the market anyway, between 7:30 and 8:00 a.m.
So it's framed as just a small adjustment for her.
Pretty much. A logistical tweak to keep her household running smoothly.
But she knows it's more than that, right?
Yeah.
She knows her husband, Norman, wouldn't approve.
Oh, she knows. Absolutely. She makes this specific, almost kind of childish command to her daughter, Mary Catherine. Tells her not to tell Norman about the driving. Says, Santa won't be happy.
Santa won't be happy. Wow. That tells you everything.
It's crucial. This secret arrangement signals her sharp awareness that Norman, who's deeply invested in keeping things exactly as they are, would absolutely disapprove of her supporting the boycott in any way, even the small way.
So she's already navigating her own conscience against what her husband and her community expect.
Yes. This small act of driving Odessa, done in secret, probably out of a mix of self-interest, keeping her help, and maybe a tiny emerging flicker of empathy, it becomes her first quiet, physical step across that color line.
So the boycott doesn't end in a day or a week. It drags on past Christmas, and the pressure starts really building, right? Especially in the white community.
Exponentially. The initial shock, maybe novelty for some, wears off, and this fear starts creeping in. What if this thing actually lasts? What if they win?
And the Christmas dinner scene you mentioned, it captures that.
It's described as a really potent scene, illustrating that rising anxiety, the spread of political fear. The Thompson family is talking about a newspaper ad. Black leaders placed it, demanding actual concessions.
So the demands are getting firmer.
Right. It's not just symbolic anymore. And who pipes up again but Tonker?
Tonker, the family ideologue.
Back again, ready to provide the hyperbole to really terrify his relatives.
What does he say this time?
He immediately connects the bus issue to, the total breakdown of their entire racial order. He argues, if Black people win on the buses now, then in a few years, the maid will be sitting next to you at Christmas dinner.
There it is. The ultimate fear. Social equality.
Exactly. And he equates it directly with communism. That was the common tactic.
Right. Linking civil rights to a foreign enemy.
It's the core strategy.
Yeah.
Use hyperbole to trigger fear. Fear of losing status, losing control. They knew the buses were just the start. If you give way on public transport, you're eventually giving way on the whole ideology of separation, of white supremacy.
And Norman Thompson, the husband, is he buying into this?
He's apparently pretty silent during this specific debate, but you get the sense he's absorbing it. His brother is expertly planting these seeds of fear. Fear about losing privilege, losing control over his own home.
And does that fear then get directed at Odessa?
It does. Soon after, Norman starts, monitoring her more closely, pressuring her about how she gets to work, trying to catch her out, maybe force her to admit she's actively part of the boycott movement.
Trying to reassert his authority within his own house?
And implicitly challenge the boycott through her. Yeah. He's trying to regain control.
How does Odessa handle that?
Masterfully, according to the sources. Incredible composure, really strategic thinking. She doesn't rise to the bait. She just tells him simply that she prefers to walk rather than sit in the back of the bus.
Using the protest itself as her shield.
Exactly. It's her survival mechanism. She apparently tells her own family later, when the lion wants to bite you, it's better to stroke it.
Wow. That's incredibly insightful. More than just survival, right?
Yeah.
It's defiance, cloaked in compliance.
Perfectly put. She doesn't rebel openly. That would bring immediate consequences. Instead, she uses the physical act of walking, her protest, as this dignified, unarguable reason to avoid the indignity of the back of the bus.
Minimizes the threat to him, maximizes her own resolve. A tactical performance.
A performance that lets her keep her job while still actively participating in the boycott. But the danger, the physical danger of this whole movement, it was always there. And it hits Odessa's family. Directly, brutally.
Yes. You mentioned her daughter, Selma, the one who was frustrated about not seeing her friend.
That's right. Selma decides she's had enough, breaks the boycott rules, and tries to take the bus to Newtown to see that boy. And she's immediately confronted, white teenagers, calling her Negro with, pure contempt. Her brother, Theodore, Odessa's son, he steps in to defend his sister.
As you would.
And he's violently attacked for it. The source says the instruction shouted was just, hit him! Theodore ends up with a serious facial injury.
Just for trying to protect his sister on a bus.
Yeah. It's a brutal reminder. This movement wasn't just about speeches and spirit. Trying to use public transport could and did lead to severe, unprovoked physical assault. For the community, the sacrifice of walking suddenly wasn't just about dignity, it was also about basic safety. Protection against this kind of targeted violence.
That violence and the fact that the Black community just wouldn't give in?
Yeah.
That must have pushed Norman Thompson over the edge.
It seems to be the final straw for him. He had been mostly passive, absorbing Tonker's rhetoric, but now he decides all this has just gotten out of control now. And the respectable way to fight back, join the Citizens Council.
The Citizens Council. Yeah. Okay, what was that exactly? Not the Klan, right?
No, not the Klan, and that's important. They were in some ways more insidious because they were the organized, respectable face of white resistance, formed specifically to fight the boycott.
Respectable how?
These were the town's leaders. Businessmen, lawyers, politicians. They didn't operate with hoods and burning crosses usually. They used economic coercion, firing people, calling in loans, political pressure, social ostracism.
So systemic pressure.
Systemic pressure. Norman apparently notes that the mayor and the entire city commission had joined. That gave the council huge political power in Montgomery.
So joining wasn't just a personal statement for Norman. It was aligning himself with the city's power structure to maintain segregation.
Absolutely. He felt the pressure, sure, but he also clearly accepted their mission. There's a detail where another council member offers to help get the Negroes off the city golf courses.
So it wasn't just buses, it was everything.
Every public space, every interaction, every resource, segregation across the board. Norman, who started out kind of quiet, is now fully committed. He sees the boycott as this direct existential threat to his family, his status, his whole way of life.
Which puts him on a collision course.
Yeah.
Not just with the boycott, but with Miriam.
Definitely, with his own wife.
Okay, so Miriam's been making these small secret concessions, driving Odessa sometimes, but then things escalate dramatically. There's an act of violence that really shocks everyone, the bombing of Reverend King's home.
Yes. That event seems to be the real emotional and ideological turning point for the whole community, but specifically, it seems, for Miriam.
How did the community react?
The Black community gathers. They pray for King's safety. They know the violence has just jumped from street assaults, like what happened to Theodore, to organized domestic terrorism against their leadership.
That's terrifying.
The source describes the feeling: profound sadness, shock. They threw a bomb at the house of a young man so full of spirit. It just highlights the absolutely perilous stakes. This wasn't a game.
Did that level of violence make people want to stop out of fear?
It must have tested their resolve incredibly, but the sources suggest ultimately it solidified their sense of moral rightness. They chose prayer over retaliation, reinforcing this idea of a righteous spiritual battle against raw hatred.
And it's right after this bombing that Norman confronts Miriam again.
Immediately after, he catches her driving Odessa again. He's clearly reached his absolute breaking point. The bombing seems to have hardened his resolve, too, in the opposite direction.
And his words, they're pretty horrifying, right? They really lay bare the core ideology.
They do. He shouts at her, calls Odessa a different species. It's not just about the boycott rules anymore. For him, it's existential. He says, she is not like us and she never can be.
That's the heart of it, isn't it? The fear isn't just legal. It's about the fundamental breakdown of the racial order he believes in.
Exactly. He's not just worried about the law now. He's terrified of the social order collapsing. He tries to scare Miriam, warns her about the physical danger she's in. He mentions seeing photos in Tuscaloosa when that Negro was chased away, referencing mob violence, Authren Lucy maybe.
So fear of physical danger from other whites, but also this deeper fear that by treating Odessa as an equal, Miriam is proving she is like them.
That seems to be the core conflict in Norman's mind. By driving Odessa, Miriam is basically confirming Odessa is like us. And that threatens the entire racial hierarchy his life, his status is built on. He sees his own wife actively undermining his deepest beliefs.
And Odessa hears this, the woman who's been trying so hard to stroke the lion.
She overhears this huge, explosive argument. And that's the moment she realizes this conflict within the Thompson house has become an active danger to her. It's untenable.
So she quits.
She resigns. She states it plainly. She can't walk safely anymore, especially after Theodore's attack. She certainly can't risk the bus. Her priority has to be her children's safety.
It's an act of self-preservation, but it also must have had a huge impact on Miriam.
Huge. It strips Miriam of her maid, the person who, made her comfortable life possible. That loss, combined with Norman's explicit rejection of her judgment, his horrific, dehumanizing language about Odessa, it triggers something profound in Miriam.
A transformation.
A complete transformation and defiance.
What does she do?
She confronts Norman directly, says, okay, since you don't approve of how I manage the house, I'm going to get a job, a secretarial job. Points out she's college educated.
Which is already a big deal for a woman of her class in 1950s Alabama, seeking independence.
A massive rebellious shift. But the defiance goes way beyond just getting a job.
How so?
She tells Norman, explicitly, the money she earns. It will be hers. Her own money. And she plans to donate it.
Let me guess.
To Reverend King and the Montgomery Improvement Association to end this whole boycott mess.
Wow. Okay. That's throwing down the gauntlet.
Absolutely. This is the moment Miriam fully converts her privilege into purpose. She's not just defying him at home. She's using her own earnings as a weapon against his cause, the Citizens Council.
She realizes she can't stay married to him and stay neutral. She has to choose.
And she chooses justice over domestic peace. It signals her irreversible break from his views, her commitment now to the boycotters' cause.
So Miriam's made her choice. No more secrets. What does she do next?
She goes all in. She understands the symbolism. Just writing a check, especially from a joint account, could be seen as Norman's money, tainted money maybe. So she decides she needs to get involved physically, personally. She starts driving for the carpool system, the system the boycotters set up to get people around.
Wow. That's a huge step, putting herself right out there.
Yeah. A massive act of solidarity. An immense risk. She's moving from the sidelines right onto the front lines, risking surveillance, harassment, violence, especially with the Citizens Council actively trying to shut down the carpools.
And that risk becomes real very quickly, doesn't it? There's a confrontation.
It's a dramatic climax. Norman Thompson and Tonker, they manage to track Miriam's car. They find her at one of the carpool stations.
Oh, boy. This is it. The final showdown.
The final public merging of their private domestic war and the political war in the streets.
And the source material apparently plays this for maximum impact.
It really does. What's truly shocking, unbelievable really, is who is in the car with Miriam when they find her?
Who?
Odessa, who had resigned, remember?
Yay!
And marry Catherine, her own young daughter.
No. He finds his wife driving her former maid for the boycott with his daughter in the car.
Exactly. This is the ultimate violation of Norman's boundaries, his entire worldview.
Tonker must have exploded.
Tonker immediately jumps in. He voices the outrage of their whole community, seeing this blatant disregard for the racial lines. You shouldn't bring her Mary Catherine to a place like this.
He sees the child's presence as contamination. Prove his fears were right.
Precisely. The final collapse of the social order right there in front of him.
And Miriam? Did she back down?
No, she refuses. She confronts Norman. He's apparently stunned, speechless for a moment, seeing his daughter there, mingling with the boycotters. It's like the failure of his entire ideology staring him in the face.
What happens then? It sounds incredibly tense.
It escalates terrifyingly fast. Other white men, presumably council members, allies, they start surrounding the cars.
Oh, this is bad.
And Tonker, the hardliner, when Miriam still refuses to leave with Norman, he's the one who basically encourages the men to violence.
Against Miriam.
The source describes chaos. Norman's car windows get smashed as this mob descends. Their rage seems focused on the Thompsons, the visible sign of white betrayal in that moment.
So Miriam and Norman are forced to flee.
They're forced to get out of there. But the violence isn't just against them. The scene ends. It's chilling. With the white mob chasing the black people who were nearby, people just walking away from the carpool stop, shouting epithets, "Get out of here, Negroes."
So even in that moment, the ultimate target remains the boycotters.
Always. They're left vulnerable on the street after the Thompsons flee. Miriam's attempt to bridge the gap, to reconcile her home and her conscience, it fails publicly, violently, and cements the break with her husband's world.
After all of that, the walking, the exhaustion, the beatings, the bombings, the family conflicts, the constant fear, did it work?
It worked. The sheer persistence, the unbreakable will of the community, it finally proved too much.
So, the Supreme Court ruling.
December 20th, 1956. By order of the Supreme Court, black citizens of Montgomery finally traveled on city buses and sat wherever they wanted.
381 days. The boycott was won.
Won through relentless, collective, individual sacrifice, day after day after day.
But the story doesn't quite end there, does it? The sources add a coda.
A very sobering one. It doesn't end with a simple happily ever after. Just weeks after the buses were integrated, 4 black churches and 2 homes were bombed.
Retaliation.
Yeah.
Immediate and violent.
Exactly. It signifies that while the legal battle for the buses was won, the broader fight for civil rights, it was really just beginning. And the white resistance was ready immediately to use extreme violence to maintain control, even defying federal law. #tagoutro.
So if we pull all these threads together from this deep dive, what this material really shows us so vividly is that these huge historical victories, like Montgomery, they weren't just won by charismatic leaders giving speeches, as important as that was.
No, not just that.
They were secured by the relentless, grinding, daily sacrifices of ordinary people. People like Odessa Carter, who walked until, as she said, she felt she had no legs left, choosing dignity over convenience, day in, day out.
And the collective effort that supported her, her neighbors, the carpool drivers, that whole network provided the practical means for that incredible endurance.
And then on the other side, you see the critical, really difficult moral shifts made by allies. People like Miriam Thompson.
Right. Her struggle wasn't against poverty or direct oppression in the same way. It was against the deeply ingrained ideology of her own class, her own husband.
And her final decision to risk her marriage, her status, her safety, to stand with the boycotters. It just shows how even a seemingly small personal decision, who you choose to drive in your car, can have these profound, system-challenging political consequences.
It really demonstrates the power of that moral choice, doesn't it? When Miriam decided her conscience mattered more than Norman's approval, she basically turned her privilege into purpose, used her resources against her own background's interests.
And when Odessa decided she preferred bleeding feet to the back of the bus, she turned her oppression into this sustained, powerful strategic resistance. Those choices multiply thousands of times over. That's what broke segregation on those buses.
So what does all this mean for you, listening? I think it means that big systems, they get challenged, and sometimes they get broken, not just by grand strategies from the top, but by these collective, repeated personal acts of defiance, acts of commitment.
The power of collective action really rests on countless individual sacrifices. Sacrifices often hidden from the main headlines, but absolutely essential.
Absolutely essential. You don't get the victory without them.
And that leads us right into our final provocative thought for you today. Something to mull over, maybe drawn right from the end of this narrative.
Okay.
The story shows, after 381 brutal days, the Supreme Court rules. The boycott is legally won, victory. But the immediate response, violent terrorism, 4 churches, 2 homes bombed.
Yeah, the backlash was instant.
So the question for you is, what did it take for that community, the Black community of Montgomery, to maintain their resolve after the victory?
Yeah.
To actually step onto those newly desegregated buses the very next day, knowing full well that their legal win had brought immediate violent retaliation? How does any movement sustain change and keep moving forward when facing that kind of ongoing targeted intimidation and violence, even after you've technically won?
That's a deep question about the true cost, the true nature of sustained courage. Definitely something worth carrying with you.
Indeed. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.